Anita, how's your mental health?
Questionable at all times. You know this.
Yeah, how's the mental health of your children?
Also a little bit tricky. Can I tell you my experience in trying to find therapists for myself and my kids, Mel?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is how it goes. You ask around your friends and your family for a referral for somebody who's nearby. You finally find somebody who sounds like they might work for your family. You give them a call and you find out that A, they're not accepting new patients, or B, they have a huge wait list. So you start over again and you ask people if they know anybody who would be a good therapist and a good fit. Finally, you find one, you go and you meet with them, and you figure out that you don't actually like them that much. But it's been so much work to find somebody who you can go to in your area that you're kind of stuck with them. Well, do you have any ideas for how to get around this?
I do because guess what? I've actually had some therapists that I have found on my own, which involves what you're saying. Sometimes I remember one time I was like 3 hours in the bathtub on my phone looking
Yeah.
through websites. I was such a prune at the end. But I have also had the experience with working with BetterHelp. And it was like, I don't want to say too good to be true, but because it is true, but it's like amazing because I was matched with my therapist within 24 hours.
And you didn't have to go through all of that other ridiculous process of trying to find somebody. And here's the cool thing too, is if that person didn't work out for you, you can just switch and say, and it's not like you're committing to another years long search for somebody who you're going to jive with.
It's true. And I lucked out, or maybe just BetterHelp is really good at matching people together because I never had to change my therapist. I loved her. Perfect fit for me. And I know that some of our friends have used BetterHelp and they've had to change therapists, and boom, same day, you can change.
Easy peasy.
You can ghost your therapist. Get a new one.
I love this idea. BetterHelp is one of our sponsors. If you use our promo code trybetterhelp.com/WWDN, you get 10% off your first month. And we totally recommend it.
Yes, get some therapy. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN. Anita, how was your week?
I'm sort of starting to lose track of weeks and days and time and numbers and values and who even knows. What is a week? I don't even know anymore. Yeah. We found out that school is not going to be back in session sometime during the week, so that was not unexpected, but also not a happy thing. Okay, now my child is banging on the door with a hanger. Oh! Can you guys hear that? Go away! And now I can't text my daughter because I'm on all my devices. Okay, we're just going to have to power through.
All right, it's going to be fine. Well, Anita, sorry that school is never coming back and that you're stuck with your kids 24/7. I'm sorry.
It's cool. It's cool. How was your week, Mel?
I too have lost track of the days, but I've been having a great time making lots of music, living in my cave, eating lots of cheese, doing lots of puzzles, teaching lots of piano.
Have you learned to make any tinctures yet?
I have not learned to make any, but I have started growing things like herbs and whatnot. And today I planted some other things in our garden of pots on the patio.
Your garden of what?
I mean, anyway.
Was there an S on the end of that or just no S? That was...
Pots. It's a garden planted in pots.
Okay. Wink, wink. I just listened to The Craziest Book, and it talked all about tinctures, and I thought about you. Have you read the book Educated?
Yes.
Yes, the mom was all about the tincture. You should be her student and learn
I
her
should,
ways.
except, yeah, that family sounds really complex.
That wasn't.
I read that like 6 months ago. This is called, she's talking about Educated by Tara Westover, who is from Idaho, and it's a really good book. It's also, there's a lot of, how do you explain it? Disturbing things. I was very disturbed, but I was glad that I read it.
Yeah, it was complex. I agree with that. Very, very interesting. But anyway, I thought of you when the mom was making tinctures and potions. Should we introduce ourselves, Mel?
Oh, yeah, I'm Mel.
I'm Anita. We're just two young widows trying to figure out widow
We
do
now. Blip, 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 blip.
We're much worse at that now that we're not in the same room, but it's okay.
I know. Well, there's a delay, too. Okay, we have a very exciting special guest today. This is my good friend, Lynne Rothrock.
Hi!
Daughter of Ruth Rothrock and Rocky Rothrock.
That's my parents.
Yep.
Wow.
Yes, Ruth and Rocky Rothrock.
You've had probably really good diction since you were a child because you had to practice saying that over and over. This is my first time meeting Lynne, so nice to meet you, Lynne.
Nice to meet you, Anita.
But Mel and Lynne, you guys go like way back, or what's the deal?
We do. So Lynne and I first met several years ago. She's a singer and a vocal coach. And of course, I'm a piano player and music director. And we both work for the Great American Songbook Foundation. It's a songbook academy. It's something that high school kids can apply to do in the summer, and they get to travel to the archives of where the Great American Songbook is, which is Carmel, Indiana. It's run by Michael Feinstein. It's a really great experience for kids. Super fun. Anyway, we met. We were not paired together as a team, but they usually pair people up, a vocal coach and a music director. And then we have a team of kids, and then we help them work through the songs, and then they have workshops, and they do a competition at the end of the week. And anyway, Lynne and I remember immediately connecting with her, and we both commented on that, I remember, during the week. Do you remember that,
yes.
Lynne?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't too long into the week when we figured out we had a bunch of mutual friends, because I worked for Heritage Festivals, which is based in Utah, where Mel was living, and she had done some work with them. Yeah, you would work for them and go on trips and stuff. And so I've worked for them for like 25 years. So turns out Mel's best friend, Carrie, was somebody that I knew. And so we had a bunch of mutual friends, which was interesting.
Yeah. And we thought that was exciting. We're like, oh, well, maybe that's, adding to the connection that we feel. And at the time, Lynne's husband was very sick and dying. And so I got to, the first time I met her, of course, that it was what was going on. So
yeah.
Wait, so back up. Okay, so when you met Lynne was not a widow.
I was not.
Correct.
But on your way to becoming a widow? And Mel, you were not a widow yet either?
No.
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say I was, like, my husband had pancreatic cancer.
When we met, I had a healthy husband that was alive, and Lynne had a sick husband that was dying.
Hmm?
So there's that. And Lynne, where are you living, and where are you joining us from?
I am in Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, will you give us a little bit of your backstory? Tell us about yourself. Tell us how you met your husband, all that stuff.
Yeah, sure. Well, I grew up here in Cedar Rapids, and I went to college and got a degree in music education and theater, and lived a few other places and worked. I lived in Minneapolis for a while. Then I lived in Seattle for a while. And then I went to graduate school in Michigan. And then I moved to Nashville, where I lived for 11 years and worked as basically an arts educator and a performer. And then I decided then my father got very sick with, guess what? Pancreatic cancer. And so he had to have a Whipple. He had to have a lot of this. He ended up that my husband and he had very similar journeys on that with that illness. But when my father died in 1996, I decided eventually to move back home to Cedar Rapids, or to at least come for a while and hang out with my mom and figure out where I wanted to land. But I was here. I moved here in the summer, and then on New Year's Eve, the first year I was here, I had a gig singing with a band at a hotel, and the guitar player was Ron DeWitt. And that's the night I met my husband. And he was older than I, and an extremely well-known guitar player in in this area, in the state, really. He was in the Iowa Blues Hall of Fame and 4-time inductee into the Iowa Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I didn't even know that such thing existed.
I know. He had a very illustrious career, and he also was just an amazing musician. So when I was hearing him play that night with this band, I was like, what are you doing here? And so it ended up, but not, not immediately, but I would say probably by the summer, we kind of started being dating, I guess, although we're both old, so it seems funny to say that. He was old.
So, Lynne, what year is this?
This would have been 2004.
Sometimes we assume that unless we had a huge life insurance payout, we don't really need to know anything about investments or even finances. But guess what? A little knowledge of finances is critical for all of us. Maybe your partner was in charge of that stuff, and now you find yourself making all the decisions. Maybe you're mad about that. Maybe I am. Nicole from the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast is here to help. She tackles financial literacy by telling the stories of women and widows and finance experts and shares the lessons they've learned as certified financial planners. Whether you know a lot and feel confident in your financial decisions or feel unsure about all of that stuff, there is more to learn. Listen and subscribe to the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast on all podcast platforms. This ad was paid for by Rockhouse Financial, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
Oh. Okay, and how old were you in 2004, and how old was Ron in 2004?
I was 41, and Ron was 55.
Oh.
Yeah.
Very cool.
He was robbing the cradle, sort of.
Yes, he was robbing really not a super big cradle, more like a middle-aged 40-year-old.
Like the geriatric cradle.
Yes, the bordering on...
Like a hammock?
Yeah, not a cradle. More like a sleep number bed, but for grandma's bursitis.
Her posturepedic.
Yes, that's what I meant to say. So, yeah, and then we ended up getting married, and I ended up staying in Cedar Rapids, which really wasn't my plan, but then I met him and we got married, and it was his third marriage, but it was my first marriage. And so that's what happened. And he was a musician, like I said. So we worked together and we did a lot of fabulous stuff musically. We headlined on cruise ships for a while and kind of saw a whole bunch of the world. And we did a lot of shows and stuff around here. And he was a blues, I'm not a blues singer. He was really a blues player. So our styles kind of... I'll say they kind of melded, but really, he learned about rehearsal from me, and I learned a little bit about soul from him. And
rehearsal.
I know.
Yep.
They're not much for rehearsal, those blues guys. But he
Nope.
he had this amazing thing when he would play. He was super present, like so present in the moment of music making. That is, I think, probably much more common in musical art forms where people are improvising solos as opposed to what I do, which is not that. But we had a very interesting musical relationship, and yeah. It was pretty good for quite a while.
Until...
And
dun, dun, dun.
dun, dun, dun. So my husband was I don't know. He'd never went to the doctor, really. And he was a big beer drinker, and he smoked cigarettes for probably 50 years. I mean, let's say. And like he would eat just sticks of butter and pasta. I mean, he was not, I know. He was not but here's the interesting thing. A month before he got sick, he had a physical. And he got a huge clean bill of health. And he was taking 0 prescriptions. I take 10 or something ridiculous like that. But he didn't have high cholesterol. He didn't have high blood pressure. And yet his lifestyle, he was a blues musician, which is like the world's unhealthiest lifestyle. So he got this clean bill of health, and he was so proud of himself. And And then I did a Heritage Festival in Cleveland. I was at a Heritage Festival, and he wasn't feeling very good the week I was getting ready to leave that week. And oddly, his urine was really dark brown. It was very weird looking. And I said, I think you should go to the doctor. Well, he was very reluctant to go to the doctor. So I made him an appointment, then I left town. So he went to the doctor while I was in Cleveland judging choirs. And he called me and said, the doctor's really worried about me. And she thinks that it's really bad. I think it's probably my liver is what originally they thought. And so I flew back the next morning, and he picked me up at the airport, and we went straight to the hospital. Because he had just had that physical a month before, when they ran blood tests and they saw these radical different numbers, they knew that it probably was some kind of blockage, because normally if you just have a slow progressing disease of your liver or whatever, your enzymes wouldn't change that quickly. So I picked him up. He picked me up at the airport, and we went straight to the hospital. And honestly, for quite a while, they thought it was a gallbladder problem, like gallstones. And so we really weren't too scared. And and I said, like, do you want me to put on Facebook that you're at the hospital? And he was like, okay, that'd be fine. Then people would know, you know. And then it ended up being a thing where we opened a door that then everyone wants information. And with each test they did, they discovered it wasn't that. Like, it's not a gallstone. We don't know what it is. It's not this, it's not that. And then they had a terrible time doing any kind of biopsy. I mean, it became an ordeal. He was in the hospital for about a week before we even got a diagnosis. So the whole time people are freaking out, wanting information from me on Facebook. And so then I was like, this is a door we opened. So I ended up basically sharing lots of things on Facebook with all of the people in our community, because we got started doing that. And it ended up being great, I think, because then I didn't have to update everybody a million times. And because we're fairly public people here in our area, you know. But yes, so he got a diagnosis of a tumor in his pancreas.
Can we just back up for a second?
Of course.
I just think it's I just think about like husbands and wives, you know, like, honey, come and look at my pee, you know, like how that's just totally normal, but kind of like weird when you say it out loud. Yeah. It's really dark and gross. You're like, okay.
Here's what's super interesting. When that happened, I just happened to be in the bathroom. I mean, he didn't call me in to look at it. I saw it coming out and going into the toilet. Because I was standing at the sink. I don't remember why. I was probably doing my hair, and he had just come in behind me to start peeing. So I happened to glance down. I'm like, bud, you're like, that's not right. And he was like, and he didn't feel good. Well, really, he was jaundiced also. His coloring was yellowing and stuff. So yeah, you're right. I know. It's like, but that was just the beginning, man.
Wow. So when you guys found out that it was his pancreas, then what was his reaction and all that stuff?
The thing is, because when my dad had his cancer, he had this big horrible surgery called a Whipple that they don't do when my dad had it, we had to go up to the Mayo Clinic because nobody did it around here. But I had told Ron all about this, and when my dad had the Whipple, I'm telling you, he suffered unbelievably from that surgery. It was so awful. And I had told,
what is a Whipple?
It's a surgery where if they're going to remove part of the pancreas, it sits in an area in your body that has a whole bunch of connectors to basically regulate your digestive system. So they can't remove part of it without reconnecting everything, because it'd be like if you remove the clover leaf of an interstate, you know, the little clover leaf thing, then you'd have all these roads that just stopped. So some guy named Whipple developed this very complicated surgery where they can remove part of the pancreas, but in turn you have to reconnect all of you're basically replumbed. Like make new connections with the different tubes to new openings. And it takes like 12 hours and it's super risky. And many people don't have a great quality of life afterwards because it's very difficult for to digest food and stuff.
Yeah, I've heard it's really, really heavy duty. It's not a fun thing.
No. And so I had told Ron how terrible it was. So the doctor's in his hospital room and he's like, you may have to have a surgery. It's called the Whipple. And it was like, oh my God, why did I ever tell him all about my dad? Because, and I said, my dad had that. And the doctor looked at me and said, then this shouldn't be happening to you then. I mean, it's rare. Like, you shouldn't have to go through this with two people. And I was like, I know.
And Lynn, didn't you and your dad have a really special bond?
Yes, we did. And I like slept on a cot next to his bed at the Mayo Clinic for several weeks. And those, honestly, it was terrible. And he suffered, and it was so bad. Ron's Whipple actually was not as bad. He did, it's still a huge surgery, but
good.
Anyway. And he was terrified. We were just terrified. And we knew it was bad. But what they do now, instead of when my dad had it, they do give people chemotherapy before the surgery in an attempt to shrink the tumor in some way to possibly make it easier to get all of it. So we were like, let's do the Whipple. Let's go in there and get this out. And they were like, no, we want you to do 3 months of chemotherapy first. So that's how it went.
So pancreatic cancer is not a great cancer to get diagnosed with. So did you have a feeling of like, we're going to beat this, or was there more of a resigned, like, this doesn't look good from the beginning?
I don't know. I will say this about my husband. He was not really an optimistic person. I mean, I think he carried the diagnosis very heavily as a death sentence for almost 4 years. I mean, I don't think he wasn't one of those like, I'm going to beat this. That's just not who he was. Mm-hmm. And then he was so sick and all the time from the treatments that we did know pretty early on that whatever happened, we were kind of in a time buying situation. Right. That like, maybe we can buy time by doing this. And there is a chance, if you can have a Whipple and they can remove the tumor, there is a chance that it hasn't yet split off. It's just not a very good chance, because it usually isn't diagnosed until it's already spread somewhere. And in his case, just like with my dad, it had already spread to some of his lymph nodes, but it hadn't spread beyond those. So, it was always pretty grim.
Yeah. So were you guys able to make preparations and to discuss end of life things because you kind of knew where you were heading? Did you feel like you got some closure that way, or some like direction that made you feel better about it?
Sort of, I guess. I mean, he and I talked about it, and I knew, I felt clear at least that I knew what he would like his wishes to be. But we weren't able to honor all of them, like he really wanted to die at home, and we didn't make it. And he just was literally the cheapest person I've ever met. And I'm not exaggerating. And so his primary focus of what to do with his body was what would be the cheapest. And honestly, I was fine with that because I just think that it's such a racket that I just think funeral stuff is such a racket that it really made me mad. And so I worked pretty hard to honor that request just because I think people are, some people just don't have money, and they just can't pay like whatever, $2,500 for a simple cremation. When I did research and I knew that in some states, a simple cremation is $600. So it's just a racket.
So Lynn, tell us what it was like being a caretaker, first for your dad and then for your husband.
I wasn't a caretaker for my dad in the same way because I was living in Nashville and I only came when it was really serious. I came to either the Mayo Clinic or my house, or my mom's house, I mean, when he was dying. And I will say that my dad had he never had any pain ever. It was very bizarre. He just got tireder and tireder, and his cancer metastasized to his liver. And he just got tireder and tireder. He literally got up and walked into his bedroom, and then he died the next day. He really didn't even have a full day that he was in bed, and he didn't really suffer. So, but with my husband, it was almost 4 years, and it's just the worst. Like being a caregiver, you're just constantly living in a heightened state of fear and desperation. I mean, all the time. And yet you still have to do stuff. You still have to, like do your job. And also you have to take care of him. And my husband I kept track of all the appointments. I kept track of all the medications. I mean, I had like books of notes because he was overwhelmed anyway. I mean, he just was not going to absorb information at these doctor's appointments. And so it was really all on me, everything. And such a terrible way to live, honestly. When I look back on it, that was so terrible. And yet you wanted to keep going because the alternative is he's gone. But you're just constantly in terror and yet responsible for everything. And we didn't have kids, I know people who had to caretake for a dying spouse or a very sick spouse and also have children and stuff. And I don't know how they do it, but in some ways, sometimes they have found it to be almost easier, just because you can't be so single focused on, not easier, that's not the right word, but
there's just more to focus on.
Yeah, and you're pulled in different ways. I don't know. And some of your family is healthy.
Yeah.
Anita's living her personal hell right now because
just say that
I know
because it can't be.
Yeah. Well, and I've noticed. I mean, of course, I know my own journey, and then I've watched Anita, and I remember I was so shocked that she was able to exercise still, and that she was getting out of bed every day. And it's like, and you told me, Anita, you're like, I have to. Of course, I have to. Like, I have 4 kids. Like, who else is going to do it?
That's right.
And so, yeah, it's like for you and me, Lynn, we're like, well, we just have us. So,
and I think, and having known you and been so close to you during the time after both of our husbands died, I think we shared, like, I will say, I'm older than you, Mel, but when my husband died, I, of course, lost my husband. I, of course, lost my musical partner, but I also lost my main job, which was being his caregiver. And that was like, I mean, I wore that job like it was my identity. And, so I would say that I really struggled with like reasons to live, afterwards, or like, what's the point, afterwards. And part of that was that I think I didn't have kids, and we had dogs that we loved, but they died too. Our dog died just before Ron did. So I had like nothing to take care of, and kind of really struggled with what's the point. And,
backing up a little bit, 7 months before Ron died is when you and I met. And then I guess 4 months after you and I met is when Scott unexpectedly passed away.
Right.
And our conversations went from, look what I got at Arby's today, to, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we know why we felt a connection to each other, because we knew Ron was going to die. And,
yes,
and of course,
yes.
Scott had passed away. And
your situation was so sudden, but I don't know. I mean, we had already made a connection, and then in some ways I was preparing for my husband to die. So I was guessing that you probably didn't have a lot of people in your life at that time who kind of had any sense of what you were going through right then,
Yeah. And it was interesting because I remember just wanting to tell you what things were like because I just kept thinking, Lynne's going to go through this. Lynn's going to go through this. And I remember we were talking about the differences between sudden death and then being a caretaker. And I remember when we were working together, when we had first met, you mentioned that it was drawing on for so long, the cancer and the caretaking. And you mentioned that you thought that you might just be ready to be active and like go back to work and like just kind of put your energy out there. And I was like,
oh, really? Did I say that?
Do you remember this? Yeah. And I was like, Lynne, just so you know, you're going to be so tired and so exhausted. And you're like, yeah, but I don't think I will, because like I just sit here a lot and like I just am waiting to do something else. And then Ron did pass away. So can you tell us a little bit about towards the very end of his journey? Because that was really, really rough.
Yes.
For you. Tell us a bit about that.
Okay. So I, of course, thought I had been through something like this once with my dad. So I thought I had some idea of what was coming. But my husband had, he just didn't want to die. He did not want to be given a time frame. He was terribly afraid of death. So it was like, he would have kept taking chemo. I mean, he would have kept doing everything that they would have let him because he just didn't want to die. But I guess it was probably the beginning of January that he went in for an appointment, and that's when they finally said, we can't give you more chemo because it's not really helping and it could kill you. So, and unfortunately at that point, he did have pain. And so he still thought, I think, that he was going to have months to live just because he was stopping treatment. But then secretly, his doctor told his daughter that she would give him about 2 weeks because she thought he wasn't going to last very long. And so that was very shocking. And, we came home and we're trying to manage it with home hospice. And he just ended up being on a lot of morphine and had some trouble breathing with his airways getting filled at night. And his daughter came and stayed here, which was great. And then one night in the middle of the night, he couldn't clear his airway. And I got really scared. And we called the hospice nurse, who was just kind of mousy and not very confident. I mean, she just was like, she was very timid. And she was like, I think you should really consider taking him to the hospice house. And I didn't want to, but I also at that point was scared enough about trying to take care of him at home. And he wasn't really lucid anymore. Yeah. So that was terribly hard. That period of when he was able to talk to me and then he kind of started saying things that didn't make sense. And some of it was just, I think, in and out of consciousness, and some of it was probably the drugs. It all became just terribly difficult. And so his daughter also agreed that we should take him, and so we had to take him to this hospice house, and it was just one horrible experience after another there. But he had what they call terminal restlessness, which is something they see a lot in young people or people who do not feel ready to die yet. He just would not let go. And his cancer metastasized to his lungs. And so sadly, he couldn't breathe. So he just gasped for breath for days and nights. It was just horrible because he was fighting to breathe with, lungs full of tumors, and it was awful.
And this was also in the winter, correct?
Yes, he died in February 16th. So, and he was in hospice care for 6 weeks instead of 2. He lingered another month, and only the last week or so were we at the hospice facility. But at that moment, it was so terrible. I mean, it's just like watching the person you love the most not be able to breathe, and yet continuing.
That was super traumatic.
It was so traumatic. I can't even tell you. I would think I was almost more traumatized by the process of watching that, and his little bony chest just fighting to breathe. It was so, honestly, it was just absolutely, it's the worst. It's the worst time of my life. I can't say. It just was horrifying, and it went on and on.
I remember that you and I were texting one day around that time, and you're like, I just wish that he could die so that he's not in this pain.
Right.
And so we were like praying for Ron to die. And I remember I was like, Lynn, I just prayed that Ron would die. I'm sorry if that's offensive, but I'm trying to help out.
I mean, I sort of was too, because the only way to end that suffering, that's the only way, it was very bad. And I did not feel that they managed his comfort level well there. And I didn't feel good about a lot of things that went down there, because when he was in our house, I was kind of still sort of in charge. And then when he went there, I mean, I had no power, but no one else was sitting by his bed all the time, I mean, it was just me sitting there watching him take every breath. And yet when the nurses would come in, I just didn't feel like they paid attention. And it was very difficult and terrible.
Adding a lot of unnecessary, terrible things on top of the very terrible thing.
Exactly. And I, of course, because I'm me, I made pretty clear that I wasn't happy with things. And then after he died, like 6 weeks after he died, I met with the 3 people who ran that facility. And
remember.
And I gave him like handouts of everything that had happened. And the one guy, the doctor who was in charge of the whole thing, literally less than a week after that meeting, he quit and took a job somewhere else. So then I was like, oh my God, that all of my complaining may not have done any good. But eventually, a few months later, I ended up being called in to talk to the head of the whole hospital. And so I was like, I'll tell you my experience there one more time. And that's it. I'm not talking about it again because it was terrible. But, I just think you have to have in the whole healthcare system, you have to advocate for yourself or your loved one. And I felt strongly that the same thing was true in the dying process. And I don't think that anybody would want it to go the way that it did, including them, Anyway.
So one question we get a lot, and we like to ask other people, is if you got to choose and you had to choose that they were going to die, would you choose quick or would you choose slow? Would you choose what you had or would you choose sudden?
I would still choose what I had.
Really?
I know. I hate that it happened the way it did, but I think that the time that he and I had together, for all that time, that there was nothing left unsaid. Mm-hmm. And he knew that I would walk through fire for him. I mean, I did. And I fought for him at every turn of his whole journey. And I mean, I would say the same thing about my dad, even though his journey wasn't the same. In the time that you have, even though it's terribly difficult, it's at least time that you have. And things become clear during that time. And so that's just what I think. Of course, I've not had the experience of a sudden death, so I don't know what that would be like. But I can only imagine that you're unprepared and you don't have the gift of having shared time when you know something is going to happen. Interesting. Both of them suck, I think, of course.
Yeah. I think we all agree on that.
I think both of them suck, but I also think there's probably an element of shock that happened for you that I know I didn't experience. I mean, because I knew it was coming. And it doesn't help that much, but in some ways there's a level of shock that I didn't have to experience, maybe.
Yeah, I've heard it described this way, that you go through the same amount of pain. It's just that the pain is either compressed into a very short period of time because of the shock, like you were saying, or that pain is just drawn out and you have pain for 4 years, But so it's not one's better than the other. It's just a different way of, doling out the horribleness.
I think that's one thing that's really been brought to my attention just over this grief journey, is that there is no such thing as better or worse.
Right.
everything is so different. And yeah, how has your empathy grown, Lynn, on your grief journey?
Well, I think you're just never the same. And that's okay. I mean, in many ways that are positive. I felt this way a little bit after my dad died too. I kind of felt like I had been through this experience where I now had a deeper understanding of the meaning of life and the capacity for love, you know. Um, and then you get busy and life comes back in, and you still get irritated by the dumb little things. You know what I mean? We return to a sense of normalcy. Um, and so I think when I went through it with Ron, it was so much worse in so many ways than when I lost my dad. But there is just an immediate gut level connection when you find out somebody else is going through something terrible that I think is on a much deeper level than you could have known before. Like I have a friend who I've met actually because we went to the same college, but not at the same time. And her husband has a terrible rare disease called Fanconi anemia. And it makes you susceptible to get a whole bunch of different kinds of cancers that just your prey. And he's already lived past the typical life expectancy for people with that disease. And he recently got a fever during the coronavirus situation, and she had to drop him off at the hospital and leave him because they wouldn't let her come in. And he did not have coronavirus, but he had another infection that needed to be dealt with, and they didn't know. And she wrote about the feeling that she had when she left him at the hospital, and I still feel like throwing up when I think about it. Like, I cannot even imagine having had to leave my husband in that setting. And I just completely felt like what that would be like for her. And you're just capable of feeling things in a different way, I think. Yes, I think it makes you much, much more empathetic. It also maybe makes you a little bit impatient with people who complain about stupid things.
For sure. Definitely.
Yes.
I almost think it rewires your brain to a certain extent that before you couldn't even think those thoughts. You couldn't even get into the place that other people are because you haven't experienced it. And now you hear about it and it's like those synapses just light up and you can just be right there. And you couldn't before. You just physically couldn't put yourself there. You did not have the experience to be capable of being there.
I agree. And I think by that token, you can't blame people who can't really relate, I guess, because if they haven't had that experience, they don't know. But still, people are dumb.
Yeah. Do you have any good stories of terrible things people have said, or some funny stories of what they maybe have done to try and help you?
The one thing I'll say is that, like, I didn't get a lot of the things that you get, like that you got, Mel. Like, nobody's saying to me, at least you're young, you'll find another man. No one has said that to me, which is good because I have no interest in that. But the thing that, like, when at his like celebration of life, people would say to me, at least he's not in pain anymore. And I said, like, can you prove that? Like, can you prove that? But like the things that people say that they're trying to be comforting. I mean, we would all love to believe that you're not suffering anymore when you die, but we don't know. We really don't know.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. But
or what if their suffering is that they are away from who or what they love the most?
Yeah, or like there's a different kind of suffering. We just don't know. But I know people feel they need to say something. And honestly, I still think saying something is way better than saying nothing. Because like there were a lot, like we're pretty well known in this area, and lots of people saw us in concert. And when we would give concerts, everybody knew Ron was sick. And I mean, there would be people that I would sometimes run into that hadn't seen me since he died and just never mentioned it. And I was like, how can you not So sometimes I'd go, oh, did you hear that Ron died? And they'd be like, yes, yeah. And I'm thinking in my mind, well, then why didn't you effing say something? But I mean,
Yeah.
people who don't say anything, it's like, just because we all knew it was going to happen doesn't mean we shouldn't acknowledge it.
I agree.
Um,
That's
you
so
know,
hard. That's really hard.
yeah.
I think we've all three had experience with that, probably.
Right. And
For
people
sure.
say, like, well, I don't know what to say. It's like, well, you don't have to have like a brilliant piece of wisdom. Just like, I'm sorry to hear what happened. How are you doing? Would be
Yeah.
fine. We have a friend, and I love this woman. She actually just sent me a face mask also. This dear friend of years and years wanted to do something for me. And I think this was it after Ron had died? Or maybe it was when Ron was going through hospice. It was at a very bad point.
No, he had died.
Oh, he had already died. And she was just so worried that I guess that I wasn't eating, which has never been a problem for me. But she said she wanted to send me a chicken. She wanted me to, she called all, she doesn't live where I live. So she wanted me so badly to have a rotisserie chicken and a bag of salad. That was her desire for me, because she's like, when things are busy, I sometimes can go a week on a bag of salad and a chicken.
I was listening to that story, waiting for her to have sent you a live chicken. So I'm so thankful it was a rotisserie
Oh my
chicken.
God, yes. Or a raw chicken would have also been gross. But she just wanted
Oh
me to
my
have
gosh.
a chicken. So
Which is
sweet.
really sweet. It's
It
just funny
is
what people get,
sweet.
like think is going to solve the problem.
Right.
If I could just get her a
I
chicken,
think
it
I
will be
think they
fine.
think of what would be comforting to them, or like, I remember
Oh,
when I was
yeah.
sick or when something bad happened and someone brought us a chicken, and so and so it's like, that's what I want to provide, which is lovely.
Oh,
But
Elaine.
How was the chicken?
well, I never got it because
Oh,
I got a gift card, which I actually
and you,
preferred, because I don't think
yeah.
I got a rotisserie chicken. But I will say this, that no one came by my house or brought me a casserole or did anything after Ron died.
I remember that.
And I was like, what's
No.
happening? Where is everyone? Why aren't you? And I heard that people brought food to my stepdaughter's house, her family.
Mm.
And yet nobody, the only thing I could think of is because everyone knew it was coming. And so they just didn't do anything. Or honestly, I'm not sure. But like, even my own family, my mother, my sister, nobody like came by, or nobody brought anything. It was like 4 days after he died, I think, that I ended up getting some flowers from the music department where I teach. And I was so like, thank you, somebody, for doing something to acknowledge that my husband has died. It was
That
very
makes me
weird.
sad.
I know, it made me really sad. And I was like, well, why is this happening? Or people just think I'm super strong and that I'm okay, which, I don't know. It was
Now I
very
want to send you
strange.
a chicken and some flowers.
I know.
I did. I sat in my house for a long time thinking, like, you guys, what's happening? Why is nobody coming over? And it's still me alone in my house mostly, which turns out there's a pandemic, so it's okay.
So, Lynn, so
Yes.
being a caretaker for 4 years, that takes you
Yeah.
out of virtually all social situations, correct?
Correct. And that is also possibly another reason why, because we weren't, yes, like another reason why people weren't coming by, whatever, just because we'd been very antisocial because Ron was so sick. So, yeah, you're not doing anything fun. You're not going to happy hours with people. You're not doing.
So, what's it
So,
been like for you since Ron has passed away with trying to re-enter into like social life? Do you have a social life? How are things going? What have you gone through?
I would say I don't have a social life. I've not done a very good job, and nor have other people in my community done a great job of inviting me places. But I don't, and I don't know. I mean, the kind of work I do, which is a lot of educational stuff and a lot of stuff involving music, I work and get a lot of interaction that way with people. But I haven't really done much socially. It's definitely was on my list this year. Like, I don't have a very good work-life balance because I just work. I like my work, and I need money, and so that's what I focused on. That's just what I focused all my energy on. And I could do a better job of inviting people to things and stuff too, but I just haven't really. It's too bad.
I know, because you're super fun. They're missing out.
I am so fun. But I will tell you this, I think there are probably people all over my town that if they heard me say that, they would be like, we would love to have you X, Y, or Z, you know? But they don't because we never really did before, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, because ever since I moved back to this town, I was a professional musician, and Ron and I travel a lot, I work a lot. I didn't necessarily develop a really strong social circle here, but I have a lot of acquaintances, like people I've directed in shows or taught adult classes to, and those are not 100% peer relationships, even though they could be, but you understand what I'm saying? So there's probably lots of people that would be happy to include me if I made a point of letting them know, but at the same time, I just haven't. I don't know the answer to that yet.
Well, this quarantine isn't helping.
That is true.
At all,
that is true, actually. Yes. Yeah. I will say that being alone in my house and sort of bereft for a long time has made this much more bearable to me. Like, this quarantine situation doesn't even really feel all that different from my life, except I'm not leaving my house to teach. This has been sitting around my house a lot by myself. I just have gotten used to that. So it doesn't even feel that different to me, which is maybe a little sad about my actual life, but it is what it is right now.
So Lynne, before Ron died, when I first met you, I know that you had been seeing a psychic, and probably for years, I'm assuming, right?
Not that I'm very interested in that sort of thing, and I have been really since my dad died. But the woman that ended up being really, really integral to this, I just saw her one time before Ron died. I saw her. Yeah, I went to see her. She'd been recommended to me. I went to see her in the summer before Ron died. And of course, I didn't know he was dying then, but I went to see her, and she's the most interesting woman. She just blurts out stuff. And I don't even remember that much about that visit, except that she said, I'm being told you have a lot of questions. What is it you want to know? And I said, I'd like to know when my husband is going to die.
Wow. Serious?
Because at that point, I'd been wondering for so long, and I was probably where I was when I was with you, Mel. You know what I mean? Like, this has been going on for so long. It's been the main thing in our world. What is going to, when is it going to change? And I don't know. But she said, I'm being told January or February of 2018.
Wow.
Whoa.
And it was February 16th, 2018.
Yep. And I also felt when she said that, I was like, I feel that way too. I feel that he'll power through Christmas. We do a Christmas show. I felt like he's going to power through one more Christmas show, and then that may be it. And that's what happened.
I'm not done yet. Sorry. We're having an interruption. There are fisticuffs.
Oh my God.
Fisticuffs.
Is there a production of all?
One of my kids wants to say hi so bad.
Okay, bring him.
He keeps saying he wants to say hi. Say it into the microphone.
No. Oh, hey. Oh, I hear someone has a birthday soon. I sent you a present.
He can't hear you.
Does he know I sent him a present?
Like you're in my ear.
No.
No, he has no idea. No, you can't. Okay, you guys go out. I'm going to be done pretty soon, okay? No. Okay, can you go back into your bedroom and play?
No.
No.
I just can stay in your bedroom.
Can you sit right here but be so quiet? Yeah, it is. Okay, sorry. We'll see how this is going to work.
Okay.
We might have reached our limit.
Lynne, do you have any good stories about seeing a psychic after Ron's passing and messages that they've conveyed about him to you?
I do. I absolutely do. After Ron died, I made an appointment with this woman as soon as I could. and it was 12. I saw her 12 days after Ron died. And I walked in the room and she said, "Oh my God, you've just lost someone very, very close to you. They were nonverbal at the end of their life, and they were in hospice a lot longer than you expected them to be." And that was before I sat down. So I said, and I said, "That's right." And she goes, "Well, he's here now and he's got some stuff to say." So I was sat down, and then she basically told me a ton of stuff about observations that he had made when he was in nonverbal, like things that he knew happened in the hospice house, and he saw me fighting for him, and he tried to control the temperature in the room to let me know he was there.
Aw.
And it was interesting. It was all very interesting, and it all made sense. And that he, when he first got to the hospice house, was the first time he left his body, because there was a period of time where he was sort of in between. And she said once he left his body and he knew that there was more on the other side, then he was no longer afraid of dying, which I loved because he'd been so afraid of dying. So as soon as he knew that there was going to be more, he was not afraid anymore. Yeah. Anyway, I don't even remember a lot of the things she told me, but she did say he was very sad that he did not want to go.
I remember one thing.
What? Go ahead.
Do you remember when the psychic told you that he missed his body because he missed drinking and smoking?
Yes. And he missed, yes. She said he misses being human. He misses being human because he misses drinking and having sex.
Now,
I'm sorry, there's like an angelic child looking right at me when I said that, but she said
this one can't hear you, so it's fine.
Yeah.
And
And she's also said, let me tell you this quick. She also said he likes where you keep his guitar.
And where is that?
And I said, "Oh yeah." She goes, "He thinks it's funny. Where do you keep it? Or where you keep it?" And I said, "Well, it's on the other side of the bed." So his Stratocaster is on his side of the king size bed still every night.
And is his Christmas tree still up in the living room?
Yes, it is.
Aww.
It is. The best one, though, the best psychic one, is about the guitar pick. So when the first concert I gave after he was gone, you were there, Mel, because it was that Randy Newman show.
When we went to the Wiener Dog races.
Yeah. When I was leaving to go to the concert, on a whim, I just grabbed one of his guitar picks out of the little bowl, and I didn't have any pockets, so I stuck it in my bra. And then when I got to the gig, I put it on the music stand, and at one point in the gig, I held it up and showed it to the crowd and talked about Ron. And then not very long after that, I had a meeting with the psychic, and she said to me, "Why does Ron keep showing me a yellow guitar pick?" And I said, "Well, I just held up one of his yellow guitar picks, to an audience when I did this concert and talked about him." And she said, "He loves that you did that. He wants you to keep doing it. But he wants you to use a blue guitar pick, and he wants you to leave it in your bra the whole time." Yeah, serious.
It's very specific.
It is, and that's what I do every time I'm singing. I have a blue guitar pick in my bra. Look at this child's face. Like, what is this? Hey.
Hi. Say hi to Auntie Lynne.
No, don't say that. That's not very nice. This is my number 4.
What was he saying?
You're stupid.
He's saying you're stupid.
Wow.
I just can only
polite
see he's
here.
talking about you, Mel.
Oh, that's fine. I'll take one for the team.
You're stupid.
Whatever. Rude.
I guess we're all stupid.
I guess so. Okay. I love those psychic stories. Those are so fun. They are the best. So, Lynne, what does life look like right now, other than like not having any friends and not being social? Like, do you have any plans for the future, or like leaving your house sometimes? Or I guess the pandemic has also halted everything.
I know. Well, I don't want to say that I don't have any friends. I just think that my closest friends don't live in this town. And so that, like, the people that I really, really connect with, that's part of my issue.
Yeah.
You know, I gotta say, I'm pretty. Oh.
Poor kid.
Here, take him. Take him.
What was the movie rated? I'm talking to you right now.
Leave
me alone.
One moment. Oh, Anita.
Oh my
gosh.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. He's been gone for a little over 2 years now. And I don't know. I'm just taking it still a little bit at a time because, I mean, like, I took on another adjunct teaching job this semester. I don't know. I don't know how long I'll stay in this house. I just don't know. If my mom wasn't around, I probably might look for a job somewhere else or look for work just because, I don't know. It's a little hard to make a living here. And since I'm a one income household now, it's just not I don't know. I don't know, but I haven't made any big decisions or done anything big really since he died. I'm just kind of trying to get through it, and who knows what'll happen now,
Well, I have a suggestion.
Oh, what is that
You
suggestion?
know what it's going to be.
To get a dog?
Yeah.
Move to Utah. Oh, wait. Cute.
Or that, because she does have a lot of friends in Utah.
Well, I miss having a dog, and especially now, I would love to have a dog. The problem is that if I'm able to resume any kind of working life, I travel a lot. And I just don't know how I could manage a dog right now. But we'll see. I'm considering if I can get my online teaching going well enough and I feel like I can handle it, I could easily foster a dog during this time period. And I probably would really like that if this goes on very long.
So your poodle, Lindy, was Ron's how baby.
Yes.
Right? And how old was she when she died?
She was 18.
That is so amazing. And how many, are you okay, Anita? Oh, okay.
What is that?
I don't know. Tell us the timeline of Ron's death and Lindy's death.
Okay, well, Lindy was very, very sick and could hardly walk, I mean, she was very old and she started getting dementia and doing things like barking all night, I mean, it was just really getting to be difficult. And she is having a hard time walking. And we put it off as long as we could because I'm telling you, she was by Ron's side for every minute. She just cuddled up with him after every chemo treatment. And so we ended up deciding that we needed to put her down. The vet thought we should. So she died at the beginning of October. And he died then in February.
One of my favorite things that you said as a reaction to somebody, which I guess this is not really that funny, but to us it is. I think you were somewhere and was it on Facebook or something? I don't remember, but you were responding to something that when how earlier we talked about it's easy to get annoyed with people when they're just complaining about stuff that doesn't really matter in the scheme of life. And I think you said something like, well, my whole family died.
Yeah.
And then I thought about it and I'm like, oh yeah, it's so true. Your husband and your dog child.
That's exactly what it was like. It was like, okay, everybody in my family has died now.
Yep.
Tough.
Yep.
Tough.
I was going to ask you about what people did to help you, but then you totally.
Nobody did anything.
That not really.
No, I
negatively. So I feel bad about that one.
People gave, people sent cards and gave money and stuff, I guess. A lot of people came to his.
Good.
It's true. A lot of people came to his celebration of life, which was a beautiful event that I completely orchestrated and made.
That's been the whole thing with you. It's you've been the caretaker and you are a strong personality and you are a caretaker. Even if you don't feel like you have your act together, it comes across like
I
you do
know.
at all times.
I know, and I almost think that is like, because that's also the role I play in my family, like I take care of
Mhm.
everybody in the family. So I think that when I was like really struggling, I was like, where are you people? And I'm like, oh, they just think I have my act together.
And I remember working with you the summer right after Ron had passed away, and I had to remind myself, like, hello, Lynne is a widow too.
Mhm.
And because you do keep going and you are in charge of things and you are good at that caretaking role, like I had to like consciously remind myself, Lynne's going through the same things that you're going through.
Yeah.
She just, the way that you present yourself is so like a boss.
Well,
You know what I mean?
Be a lady
I mean that.
boss.
Yeah, you're the lady boss.
I'm a little bit of that, I
so-
guess. Yeah, I know. I
Yeah,
know.
but oh man,
Okay.
we have a very important question, Lynne.
Okay.
What is your favorite cheese? And can you have cheese?
I I can have cheese, although my psychic tells me I should avoid dairy.
Why?
Fire her.
And one time she said, Ron says you should quit eating dairy. And I was like, oh, he does he? Now but
Now he's healthy.
I know, like now he's giving all the rules about what I should eat. And I do like cheese and I do eat it. I do love a good like goat cheese. I love goat cheese.
Me
I love
too.
brie.
Mm.
I like Gouda.
Regular or smoked?
Smoked or not smoked?
I think I like regular better than smoked.
Ah,
Okay, fair enough.
interesting.
Maybe.
Well, cool. Lynne, thank you so much for being our guest today. I'm so glad I got to see you because I've
I
been
know.
super bad at Marco
I
Polo.
know.
I'm really sorry. But we're so glad to have you. So I can't wait.
Thank you. I love your podcast and I'm glad you're doing it. And I'll spread it around. Thanks for having me.
What are
It
you
was
guys
a delight to meet you.
now? I know what
Yes,
you're up to
you too,
this
Anita.
week, Lynne. You and I are probably just online teaching this week, right?
Correct.
Anita.
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of online teaching and I'm getting the hang of it, but it's actually more time consuming. Not the lessons so much as my classes, because I'm also teaching 3 college classes at the same time as doing all the lessons. And it's going okay. It's just a different kind of prep and stuff,
Yeah.
It takes more time. But it's good. It's okay. I'm happy to be still working because if I was sitting here with nothing to do, I don't do well with that.
Yeah.
And also if I had no income, which, here's one good bonus thing
Oh, do it.
about my dead husband.
What?
I got my money from the government today and they gave me they gave me twice as much because the only thing I can think of is that the last time, like I haven't filed taxes yet this year, but last year I was still filing jointly because he lived a month and a half into 2018.
Oh.
So I think that's my theory, but I don't know if I want that to go out over the airwaves because I don't want to give it back.
Well, I don't think we have any listeners that are like auditors.
That are not just report me to the IRS. I know. I thought, well, my mom goes, "Oh, you need to give that back" or something like that. And I was like,
No
"My
way.
husband died.
You earned it.
Died. I deserve an extra $1,200 for God's sake."
I agree.
So I sort of think it was a little nod from my husband.
I love it.
Yeah.
Anita, what are you doing this week?
So this week, I have a really full schedule. Like, wow, it's just full of being at home and yelling at people, do stuff. And then we have found a new activity. It's called Go to all the area schools to see what they're offering for school lunch.
Oh.
We were just going to the elementary school, but then we realized there's a junior high and a high school near us. So we've been seeing what they all have to offer. And today we went to the high school and they tried to offer me 9 milk cartons for 3 kids. They were like, "You're going to need 9 milk cartons." And I was like, whoa, I don't think I need 9 of those for one day.
Are they just giving, or do they just give the meals away?
Yeah, they're doing free school lunch for anybody from the age of like 1 to 18.
Nice.
So it's just something for us to do. That's kind of what we're doing. They don't eat the school lunches mostly. They just stare at them. But it gives us something to, somewhere to go. And we realized that, the high school does smoothies on Tuesdays. So that's what our week is looking like, is just, perusing the school lunch offerings.
Wow.
Okay, cool. Well, you guys, thanks so much for chatting. It's so good to see you, Lynn. I miss you.
I miss you.
I miss you too, Anita.
I miss you, Mel.
Oh, man.
I miss you,
okay.
Lynn, even though
I miss you and I just met you. Oh.
You guys would like hanging out.
Good.
I'm pretty sure.
Thanks for hanging out with us this week. Remember to send us an email or a message on Facebook if you want to chat with us or be a guest on our show. Also, we love to get your reviews. Mostly we like good reviews, but if you want to send a bad review, that's fine too. We'll just make fun of you on air for bad reviewing young widows with cancer. Anyway, it's fine. Join us next week. I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
And I'm Lynn.
We're just 3 young-ish widows trying to figure out widow we do now. That wasn't painful. Okay. I'm stopping.
This is my favorite thing to discuss with you.
Tell me, what is it?
One of my favorite things. I do enjoy tacos and cheese and dogs. This is about how you cannot pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a phone plan, especially when you're a widow, your person is dead, you might have kids, you might need another option, and you just want your phone to work, you want unlimited texting and service, and you want it to be like $25 a month.
It blows my mind that they have plans that start at $15 a month. That is so cheap. And the cool thing is it uses other 5G networks, and so you don't have to pay extra for that, and you still get great service.
Yep, Anita and I have traveled all over, and I have used my phone. So I highly recommend it. And my mom's even on it. When my dad died, we put his phone down to the cheapest plan, which is $15 a month. And I think my mom's on the $20 a month plan, and it's so worth it. It's so much cheaper than what we were all paying before. So I highly recommend it if you're on a budget or not. Who cares? Ryan Reynolds is in charge of the company, and they send you free stickers with Ryan Reynolds temporary tattoos. It's kind of the best. So if somebody wants to sign up, what can they do, Anita?
Go to trymintmobile.com/WWDN. Seriously, you guys, such a great idea. Save yourself some money.
And if you're worried about losing data or having any changes with your phone, not going to happen. They walk you through it. Everything's fine. It's the easiest process of all time. Again, that's
trymintmobile.com/WWDN.